Hey everyone, it's DrRic. I wanted to talk about slowing down. I'm taking a hike at Mathiasen State Park, and I thought this would be the best time to talk about chewing food. It's more than just chewing, it's satiety. It's the feeling of fullness. It's the dopamine response of saying, I had enough to eat. Usually if you inhale your food, like in those contests where everybody's trying to get a bunch of hot dogs down, they can get a lot down, but they usually get sick afterward or throw up because it's not human nature to eat that fast. Well, I think in the United States we do have a problem where eating is considered a chore. And because it's a chore, it takes a lower priority. In Italy, where I just visited, I saw people standing around or sitting around in these mom and pop restaurants when my family would go in to eat real fast, American style. They would sit around, they would usually go out and have a smoke when a new person joined the party, they'd order wine, espresso, they'd eat more, then they'd go out again and smoke, come back in, have dessert, kind of hang around for a while. And if you think about that here, it's almost like, ooh, they're taking up that table, or why are they taking so long, or boy, they're loud. And again, it's a different concept than what we're used to. In the United States, we eat fast. Usually, if we have a lunch break, we run or walk fast, come back real quick for the lunch break, not eat too much, again, because it's an inconvenience. We try to narrow down the amount of calories. I've seen some people even go down to 800 with the HCG diet, or 1,000, and maintain on 1,000 but not lose weight. And I think that's very admirable to be able to take that many calories in per day and get through your basal metabolic rate requirements and exercise and do other things. But here's the thing. What I noticed was that these folks in Italy, when I talked to a cardiologist, an Italian cardiologist, I had noted the folks' body weight. I did not see obesity over there, except for the tourists. The guys that I talked about that were hanging out, drinking coffee, drinking wine, eating a lot of orders, they had really good body mass indexes. They were lean. And you wonder, well, how could they do that all the time and maintain a low body mass index, whereas Americans cut down to massively tiny amounts of calories and carbohydrates and yet still were overweight? Well, my Italian cardiologist I spoke with said that there is a problem with tobacco, but Italian or at least Mediterranean longevity is still higher than American longevity. And how is that? I think it's because they value the experience of food. They take their time. They enjoy the company and have satiety, not only in the taste of the food, but also the company they keep and the act of eating. So, and a lot of places over there were also closed from noon to 2, like the South American siesta. And you wonder, well, is that productive? And for a business, it might not be, but for a lifestyle and a health crisis, that's definitely productive because you get rest. I wouldn't necessarily go to sleep, but if they take naps, that's fine. They probably have really good sleep habits versus us over here who can't sleep at all or are up in the middle of the night worrying about the next day. So I think the value of this conversation is to, number one, slow down when you chew your food. I mean, the act of chewing breaks down fiber, breaks down protein. If you just inhale, swallow whole food, processed food even, then you're asking your gut to do the rest of the work. And the gut can churn, just like a blender. The gut can make anything solid into liquid with its acid, with its movement, with its contractions. But why ask it to do a lot of work? That'll just cause cramping and maybe poor digestion. To release some of the nutrients, micronutrients, vitamins in food, you gotta chew it up here and start breaking down the material in the mouth. Amylase, saliva, just the breaking up of tissue that you're eating will help in the process when you're going through digestion. It'll also signal to the body satiety, I'm good, here comes the food, tells the brain, oh, that was great, because of the taste buds being stimulated. And there's taste buds in the mouth, there's actually taste buds and olfactory nerves in the nose, there's stimulating sensations in the stomach as well. A little bit different than taste buds, but all these things are involved in feedback to the brain to say, that was great, I'm happy. I mean, if you just rely on dopamine surge from a big high sugar meal, you'll have satiety from the meal, just like you'll have satiety from tobacco or taking a hit of drugs. But that dopamine high that you get will crash suddenly, and then you'll look for the same thing again, which usually gives you a negative feedback cycle. It causes problems with addiction. Food addiction, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, tobacco, it's all the same. I mean, when I'm out here, this is addictive to be in nature, but it doesn't have the crash effect that you will with bad drugs, alcohol, tobacco, or sugar. So you have to be careful. I mean, breaking down sugar, or I should say, breaking down food. And it doesn't matter if it's carbohydrates, fats, or proteins. It all begins up here is what I'm essentially aiming at. And when you begin the digestive process with ignoring one of the biggest factors of proper digestion, you're setting up inflammation and pain to the rest of the digestive tree, which is stomach, small intestine, liver, pancreas, large intestine. So why put it through all that, especially if you have a problem with bloating or if you have a problem with digestion, irritable bowel syndrome. You don't want to overload the belly, so I think it does help. There was a nice study by Williams about, it was just an initial study to see if it would make a difference or be worth it to invest more money in studying other folks, but it took 2 small groups. He exposed one group, well, he actually exposed both of them to a crappy meal, essentially, bad fats, and then exposed the other group to healthy fats. And the bad fat folks, that when they ate the bad fat diet, had inflammatory markers right after the meal. The good diet, or good fats, when folks ate the good meal, they didn't have any inflammation. But he exposed both of those groups to stress in eating, and he found that the bad fat meal caused inflammation like it did before when eating under stress or duress. But the good fats, if you ate them under stress, it caused just as much inflammation after the meal as the bad fats. So even if you're eating a whole food, mostly plant-based diet, if you're eating under duress as a chore, you're still causing inflammation after your meal. And then again, it sets up for all these unnecessary hormones that cause inflammation later on and lead to heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. And other things to mention. So even if you're healthy with your choices, if you're not eating in peace, you're causing problems. So it does make a difference as far as chewing. And there's a certain concept that you have to chew a certain amount of bites per pieces of food, but you know what, it depends on what you're eating. I mean, if you're eating a smoothie, which you can chew too, if you're eating a smoothie, you don't have to chew that much. If you're eating pasta or fiber, you chew a lot. If you're eating meat, you got to really chew, or maybe even cut tiny so you don't have to chew as much. But so bites per pieces of food vary, but mindfully eating is what I'm getting at. When I went to the Chopra Center to become a yoga instructor, they made us eat in silence one day, and the meal looked good, but that was one of the best meals I've ever had because we ate in silence. We were mindful about the bites, about the smell, about our surroundings, and we took our time. So when you take your time, you'll have a level of satiety. When you have satiety in the brain and in the body, then you don't tend to overeat. You don't tend to have that inflammatory response after eating any kind of food. So it would be interesting to find out if you ate even crappy food in peace, would it cause less inflammation? I don't know. We'll have to see where Williams takes his study. But bottom line is that we as Americans probably don't take care of that mindfulness I always talk about as far as lifestyle change. And you can mindfully eat. It starts with chewing slow, eating properly, not making food and refueling a chore, but making it fun, eating with the family. There's great value in trying to maintain that dinner time with the family or with friends. Now, if you can't do all 3 meals, I think that's fine. And there's certainly certain people who have to do elimination diets or stay away from certain foods, and you do have to put some science into your eating. But if we also sprinkle in the recipe practicing some form of mindful eating, I think it'll start there, and it'll blossom that every other cell in the body will not only get the fuel that it needs for the day, but also not overindulge, be happy with just and content with just eating what is just barely necessary. I mean, if you think about it, if you have a hamburger or 2 to 3 bottles of wine, or not bottles, but glasses of wine or beer, or 2 donuts, if you just look at it as value, calories, you have to do, just for what I just mentioned, about 3 hours of running, biking, or exercise. Who's got 3 hours of exercise? So if you think of it on that kind of basis where you eat and you exercise, you can't really use exercise in that way. You have to do something else to either burn off all the crap that you're putting into your mouth, or you have to be mindful and not put so much crap in the mouth. And then again, you have to eat and digest that stuff in peace. So I've talked about it enough. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of a basis to maybe, number one, get out to disconnect from your computers and get out to nature, but also slow down. It begins with chewing. Be mindful with what you choose. Be mindful with how you prep it. And be mindful with how you eat it.